Mydo. This is a story about a young Vietnamese puppy called Mydo who lives in Hanoi. She is always getting into trouble, and here is one of her adventures. Mydo loves many things, and she loves learning and playing with her family, but most of all she loves to watch TV. One day she watched an old film called Mary Poppins, and she could not stop singing Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. After watching the film, she decided that her day was humdrum and went out for a walk, even though her parents had told her not to go out alone because it was dangerous for a small pup in Hanoi. Mydo walked along the streets and saw many things that she had never noticed before. The shops were more colourful than she had noticed, and the people looked happy and smiled at her as she walked along. She saw a couple kissing in the park, and she stared at them in disbelief before continuing to the other side. After leaving the park, Mydo felt hungry and wanted to find some food. She walked for ages before she found a smell that she liked. It was unusual, and she was sure she had never smelt it before. Mydo walked into the back door of a small restaurant and looked around. There were many people in the restaurant, and they all looked happy. They were stuffing their faces with a plethora of food. Mydo was sure she would find some scraps here, but she started to feel a little uneasy. Mydo noticed that lots of people were looking at her and smiling. Some were licking their lips and trying to call her over to their tables. Suddenly, she started to float. A man was lifting her into the air. The man placed Mydo under his arm and said, "How did you get out of your cage?" She didn't understand until she saw a sign on the wall, and then everything became clear. The sign said, "Best dog meat in Hanoi." Mydo had a very bad feeling in her stomach. The feeling was so bad that she could not help what happened next. "Ew, you dirty, filthy animal!" the man shouted as he dropped Mydo to the floor. She ran away quickly, dodging the customers and staff, and ran to freedom into the darkness. Mydo had not realized the time had become so late, and she started to feel very scared in the city all alone. She looked around, and things looked stranger at night. She could not see the usual things. This meant she was lost. Mydo started to panic and wished that her owner was there to protect her. Then Mydo saw a light getting closer and closer. She looked and then stared at the light, but it continued approaching her. Just as it was about to hit her, she jumped out of the way. "Hey, watch where you're going," she barked loudly. Mydo mumbled to herself as she walked along. Then she saw some lights and a shop she recognized. "I'm saved," she woofed excitedly, but her troubles were not over yet. The shop had the same name, but it was different. Mydo lowered her head in sadness, and she continued her journey. She walked for hours along the streets. At night, Hanoi was far scarier than during the day. Then, just as she had given up all hopes, she heard a voice that she recognized. It was her sister. Mydo looked around but could not see her. "Hello, where are you?" she howled, but there was no reply. To be continued. Thanks for listening. See you next time.